Okay, so now I'm going to talk about superlatives. We've talked about comparisons where you're comparing two different things. Superlatives is when you have three things or more and you want to say it's the highest. So for example, I have three sons. I'll show you a picture. Okay, here's my three sons. So a superlative would be, this is Owen, Lucas, and this is Caleb. So a superlative would be Owen is the oldest brother, or Owen is the tallest brother, Caleb is the youngest brother, or Caleb is the smallest brother. So it's when you're making the most or the least. That's what we're doing with superlatives. Okay, so how we do that is we want our definite article, then más o menos, then the adjective when we're comparing an adjective. So, for example, Antonio es el más alto de mis hermanos. Antonio is, and actually let's look over here. Antonio is the tallest of my brothers. So what I want to say is Antonio es the tallest. So I'm going to say the most tall. Tall is going to agree with Antonio, so I'm going to have alto, and so then my the is going to agree with Antonio as well. So Antonio es el más alto de mis hermanos. The soap is the least expensive of all. This soap, este jabón, is the least expensive. We're talking about jabón, so we're going to say it is the least expensive. Caro is going to agree with the soap. You always want to agree with the subject, which is the first person mentioned in your sentence. So we say, este jabón es el menos caro de todos. When you use a noun with the superlative, the definite article precedes the noun. So if I want to say, you know, my lip gloss is the most expensive lip gloss that they sell. So if I mention lip gloss again as the group out of which my lip gloss is the smallest or the most expensive, I would say my lip gloss, mi brillo de labios is el más caro. Ay, perdón. My lip gloss is the most expensive lip gloss they sell here. Mi brillo de labios es el brillo de labios más caro que venden aquí. So if you put the category back in, it's going to come after the article. So Carlos's house is the most popular house in the neighborhood. La casa de Carlos es la casa más popular del barrio. Adjectives and adverbs that have irregular forms in the comparative, they're the same. So the same irregular forms are in the superlative form. So you can use, instead of más bueno, you can use mejor. Instead of más malo, you can use peor. And instead of más viejo, you can use mayor. And instead of más joven, you can use menor. So if we go over here and we do practice, el vuelo entre San Francisco y Puerto Rico fue blank de todos los vuelos que tomamos. And we've got largo. So let's say it's the longest. So the longest would be, we're talking about vuelo, so I want el. Longest. El. Longest would be más. And then largo, because largo needs to agree with vuelo. Because you want everything to agree with the first noun that's mentioned. So el vuelo entre San Francisco y Puerto Rico fue el más largo de todos los vuelos. No vamos a esa playa, es blank de todas. So if we're not going there, it's probably the worst of all. So then we want to say it's the worst of all, which would be, the goes with playa, because we're talking about playa this time. So our the needs to be la. The worst of all, which would be más. And then malo again needs to agree with playa, because what's the worst is the beach. So mala. Es la más mala de todas. Or you could have said, whoops, you could have said, es la peor de todas. Because you can use peor for más mala. Carla es muy responsable. Susana es responsable. Alicia no es responsable. So Alicia, so we've got Carla is responsible, Susana is responsible, Alicia is not responsible. So we want to say Alicia is the least responsible. So the agrees with Alicia. Alicia is a girl, so la menos responsable. No tengo mucho dinero. ¿Cuál de estos hoteles es económico? Means like inexpensive. So if I don't have a lot of money, I want the hotel to be the least expensive. So I want which one of these hotels is the meaning we're trying to determine one. So we're going to use el más económico. Estas dos clases son blank que tengo yo. We've got difícil, so probably the most difficult. We're talking about two classes here, so we need las this time because we're talking about the classes. They're both difficult. Las más, and then we want to make difícil plural because it agrees. All of these, the adjective and the agree with classes, so it needs to be estas dos clases son las más difíciles. El sofá azul es blank de todos los sofás que hay en mi casa, perdón. Probably the biggest. So we want it to agree with sofá, which would be the biggest, más grande. And I don't do anything to grande because I'm talking about sofá and there's only one of them. Mi madre is blank de la familia. She's probably the most hardworking. So the I needs to agree with madre, which is la, most, más, oops, and hardworking, trabajador, but we're describing my mother. My mother is the one who's hardworking, so we want to make it trabajadora. Sara y Anita son blank de la familia, probably the prettiest. It's two people, so we want it to be las, most, and then bonito, but bonito needs to agree with Sara y Anita, so bonitas. Franco tiene 38 años, Eduardo tiene 40 años, Mario tiene 45 años. Franco is he's probably the youngest of the three brothers because he's 38, so we wanted to agree with Franco, el más joven, or we could say el menor de los tres hermanos.